All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are here with John Dunsmoor, part two, because if you know anything about John, you just know that he's a wealth of knowledge. And John, I know you said you're no guru, but you are. You are the guru of training and the future and innovation. And I'm so excited to dive more into the future of training. Because if you're a safety professional, if you're a leader at a company right now and you're trying to elevate your safety program to the next level, I want to know from you, John, what do we need to be focused on right now? What are you seeing in your industry as far as where training is going?
Thank you, Apollonia. It's interesting to be back. Thank you for taking a second bite at the apple.
Yeah.
Apollonia, what I see happening is COVID, and we keep coming back to COVID, COVID, COVID. But the fact of it is that we have learned about capacities that we all have as trainers and teachers and instructors that have been there, but we've never relied on before. And
Mm,
the problems that are arising are coming at a faster pace. They're less able to be anticipated. And because of that, the expectations are growing. So
right.
think about this. Um, in the training field, things that now are on the edge, optional, are going to be expected and mandatory soon. Let me give you an example of leadership that shifts. And I always look at trainers as leadership roles. I mean, that's what they are really
Great.
supposed to be doing. Trainers are not some outside source. Trainers are supposed to be leading people into more productivity and less exposure to risk and hazards.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of my favorite examples was a guy named David Marquette, and he was a captain of a submarine, U.S. submarine on the West Coast. And he took over the USS Santa Fe, which was the worst operationally and the worst, it was at the bottom of the barrel. And he took it over. And the minute he took it over, he took it out to sea. And he said, well, we might as well put people through their paces to find out what's the submarine, why is it not doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
So he takes it out to sea, takes it down a few hundred feet, and he and the engineer running it through what they call a scram, meaning they're going to have to shut down the nuclear reactor, go on batteries, and the crew has to figure out what's going wrong, what
Mm-hmm.
happened. And he and the engineer set it up so that the scram occurs. It's an emergency, and they have about 8 hours of battery before things get really unpleasant, because when you shut the nuclear reactor down, you're on huge batteries underneath the ship. And I should say boat. People don't refer to submarines as ships, actually. But on the boat, they are people are going about their list, and everybody, right down to the cook, has a list they're doing of what's gone wrong to try and figure out where the fault is within the system. And he moves around around the boat and sees, the guys are going about their business, but there's not a lot of stress on. The object of a training exercise is to place people under realistic stress
Mm-hmm.
so that they respond in a real situation with that movement, that speed, that tempo. And so he says, well, I'm gonna up the stress. We're at about 1/3 speed moving through the water. When you take and move a submarine at 2/3 speed, you're doubling the speed and cutting the batteries in half.
Okay.
So that's what he orders. He turns to the officer of the deck. Now, he's the only new guy.
Mm-hmm.
94 men and 11 officers and the new captain. They're all the same people, but the captain's been replaced. And he turns to the officer of the deck and he says, order all ahead 2/3. And of course, he gets a now hear this, all ahead 2/3. Well, the captain's able to observe the young man that's in control, literal control of the ship, and nothing happens. The guy doesn't do anything. So he finally walks over there and says, we just ordered all ahead 2/3 and you haven't done anything. And the young man says, no, sir, there is no 2/3 on this ship. It isn't set up that way. I can't carry out the order. The captain goes back over to the officer of the deck and says, did you know that there's no 2/3 on the ship? And he says, yes, sir. And he says,
Why
why did
didn't
you
you
give an
tell
order?
me? Yeah.
And he says, because you ordered me to. And at that moment, David Marquette realizes the problem wasn't with the men. The problem was with the structure of how he was getting people to do things. To push decision-making down to the lowest level to make people responsible for their jobs was what turned the Santa Fe within 3 years from being the worst in the Pacific Fleet to #1 3 years in a row. So pushing the decision-making down is equivalent to us pushing the training down.
Oh my goodness.
Does it make sense?
Giving the keys, giving the ownership.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing you say, is passing
is.
the ownership onto just not a traditional safety program where there's a safety director and he or she is the trainer, and training and education stops there?
We can't afford to be the experts.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So what he did was give that authority, but training and authority. You can't just give authority. You have to give training and authority to the people. Now think about this. You're out on a trenching site. I'm going to use that as my theme just because we've got some trenching videos to look at here in a little bit. Think about it that you're out on a trenching site and one of the workers pulls out a notebook and takes some notes on safety. Now, would you admonish that person, say, hey, put that away, don't do that?
No.
No way. But what about the worker who pulls out his cell phone and starts videoing?
Management would most likely go nuts and
Right.
Yeah.
What was the old thinking is now longer. You wouldn't admonish somebody for pulling out a notebook and taking safety notes. But if they pulled out a cell phone, the mental thinking is, we don't want that.
Right.
Well, let me give you an example of what we did do to show how you can translate a worker's safety intentions into training moments that they, like the officers and the men on the submarine, were responsible for, to push the decision making, to push the safety thinking down to the level where they are actively involved. And adults learn best when they're actively involved. I'm going to share a screen with you and I want you to walk through this with me. We did a brief video up in Frederick last year. And I think I referred to this in the last time we talked.
Yeah.
But in the video, we did it with a 360 camera, but you could do it with your regular cell phone. And we had the guys make some mistakes while we were doing it. And we were able to play this. Now think about this. You're in a classroom, and I say to you, pull out your cell phone, and I'm going to share this screen with you.
Okay, I'm the student. I'm pulling
You're
out my
student,
phone.
right? Now, hopefully you see a screen with 3 QR codes.
Yes, I do see that.
And by the way, anybody who's watching this can do the same thing. You can aim your cell phone on camera at that upper left-hand corner of the QR code. And when you hit the camera, it'll say, go to the YouTube. So go ahead and do that.
All right, so I'm a student in your class. Oh, it did it. Okay. All right, it prompts me to YouTube right now. Rocky American Education Center Trenching Export, and I am 3D or 360. Yeah. I'm seeing a 360 view of a trenching site right now.
So you can move that around you and look all the way around you, 360, Apolonia.
And I'm seeing, okay.
Look up at the clouds. You can look at the operator on the backhoe. You can look at the men that are walking around in the trench. And you can see them.
Goodness.
Yeah, you can literally turn around. I know it's.
I know, I'm trying. What the heck? John, this is blowing my mind because what I'm seeing in front of me right now is the future of training, period.
It is, but the point of this is not just the future of training. What you're seeing is very, very inexpensive. So for any company, even a small company, and say, oh, we can't afford this technology, is nonsense.
So explain. I know.
Well, the camera itself was less than $200, and it comes with an application, and it doesn't come with any controls. You You actually control the camera with your cell phone.
And so if you're a safety trainer, if you're a safety leader at your company right now, I can purchase a camera. And what type of camera is it?
The brand was Rylo, Rylo, but there's a bunch on the market, but they start at a couple of $100. And
what type of camera is this that we're
this
looking
is a 360 camera, and as you can hear, it actually records sound as well as recording the video.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can put it on a tripod. You can hand hold it. You can put it on a stick, which is what we did. We put it on a pole, and we're able to walk around the area. Now I'm going to quit sharing that, since hopefully, if anybody has wanted to, they can click on those various. Those were just test clips. Yeah, and before I click off of this, let me point out, this is not something that's on YouTube that you could go search. These are private. So if you were working for a company and you wanted to put these kinds of QR codes for training purposes, they're private. They are not something you can search. They're not going to get into your violate company privacy policies. But anybody with the code can get in there and take a look at it. Now, my intention is to start out by having the trainer teach the crew captains how to do this, and for them to teach their people how to do this. Does that make sense? So that
way, boots on the ground is capturing footage, and footage that we can use this for training purposes. We can use this for new hire orientation. We could use this for hazard recognition. We could use these clips for job specific, equipment specific training. And so,
but I want to shift your language for a second. You just said we, like in we the trainers.
Okay, but
the workers. They the workers should be using these clips to onboard others, because every time we push down the decision-making process, what we're doing is we're elevating the overall level of training that we're doing, because it reinforces with the workers that they are responsible for their team members' safety.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, that is the goal, to be out on site, be your brother's keeper, be the person looking out, making sure and raising your hand when something doesn't look right. If somebody is next to you is doing something wrong, doesn't feel right, that you feel safe enough, confident enough, and that you care enough about the person you're working next to stop them, to pause them.
If you've been onboarded by someone like that, and you are in turn onboard people with your own work as a worker, then you do feel safer exercising the authority you have to stop work, or at least slow work down. It changes the mix. And what's happened with COVID is, over a very short period of time, we've shifted the technology to allow us to give it to people. It's inexpensive. We're getting to use it better. And who are we to hoard this technology, hoard this attitude? So I think that we're going to find that the expectations are going to change, and it's going to be for the good. It's going to be for the good of the company. It's going to be for the good of the workers, because building that confidence to say, hey, wait a minute, something ain't right here. And here's the other thing that I was going to mention about it. I talked earlier about the gamification of training.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, this is part of the gamification of training. Supposing you have multiple teams, because it's not something that just one team needs to do, but they embed a mistake, plan a mistake, not that going to harm anybody, but they plan a mistake in one of their little 3 or 5 minute video clips. And then you have a training in which they play, can you figure out what it is? The game that they can play on their other workers is something that is an adult engagement technique.
I love where you're going with this. Yes.
You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
If they're engaged with each other, training and playing games, literally, but we learn a lot out of games. I mean, that's a core of human understanding. And because the technology is now so inexpensive relegate a worker to just pulling out a notepad and taking notes is, I mean, Stone Age. We might as well give them a hammer, chisel, and a chunk of granite.
Why is that? Why do we retain more? Why is gamification, why is it important that safety managers, leaders in a company, management, why is it important that we embrace the future and embrace gamification and technology like this versus the same old training PowerPoint?
Well, if PowerPoint is just an extension of storytelling, and storytelling has suffered because of the printing press. I mean, it starts with Gutenberg. If you can read it, you don't have to orally say it. And we know, though, that at the worker level, talking among people, telling stories to one another, and this is the way young people are onboarded and learn, whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is onboarding with that old style technology, with just, this is the way we've already always done it. The problem with that is we perpetuate mistakes in the field.
Okay.
The young people have things to teach us.
Right. And where have you seen companies? So the video that you just showed us right now, that was right before COVID. Is that right? Last year?
Yeah,
and
so started in February shooting it. And all of a sudden, the ceiling came crashing down on us.
Are there any other techniques that you've been seeing in the training world that you think that companies should start adopting today? So taking videos such as these, so you can have a 360 experience of a job site, taking that to the classroom, taking that amongst coworkers, the employees, the workers, they're able to take those video clips and train. What are some other tips that you can give to trainers and the workers in the field?
I'm working for Red Rocks Community College. I don't represent any company. I don't have any, this is not a sponsored issue. There are a number of companies that offer free training for using these new technologies. And I'm just thinking that any trainers who are not engaged in learning the extent of what we've just shown you are going to be left behind, frankly.
Right. Yeah.
If it used to cost tens of thousands of dollars to produce even that little bit I did, the fact that the cost has come down so much, it's sort of like, if the notepad cost $10,000, nobody would carry them. Mm-hmm. But paper's cheap and pens are cheap, so everybody could carry one. And because the phones are inexpensive, everybody has those, which makes it personal. Now think about this. You think of your phone that you carry as a part of you. It's personal. I mean, if you leave it somewhere, you're like, I got to go back home and pick up my phone, because it is so embedded in who you are. Mm-hmm. When safety is embedded on that device, it changes the relationship.
Wow. I never thought about it that way. Yeah, you're exactly right. And so embracing technology in the classroom, and you mentioned something earlier, just the whole topic of passing that ownership to every single level of the company. Are there any other ways or techniques to do that? How do you get everybody involved in the safety program? What's some advice or some things that you
usually, there's safety in numbers. So therefore, rather than make it an individual process, assigning teams to come up with brief, 3 to 5 minutes. You don't need to make, the Titanic or something. What you need to do is to break it into teams, and you'd say, well, what about the team that's in the warehouse?
Okay.
You're telling me they don't do anything that has potential danger to it, that might be of interest to other people, such as mixing chemicals or, the procedures there. Everybody, no matter where they are, should be responsible for a piece of training. The guy that's out in the field, it won't hurt him to know what goes on in the warehouse. I'm just giving you that raising the overall level of training responsibility for different little teams is something that can build cohesion.
I love that.
there's
Yep.
bragging rights, and there's no pride in the field.
And it makes it competitive in a way of,
Oh God, yes.
yeah, absolutely. I could definitely see that right now is, yeah, the truck drivers and being able to create something and to showcase their craft versus the shop versus the rouseabout versus
Absolutely.
XYZ. So, okay.
Well, and drivers can do the same kind of a thing. I mean, I did another one of these videos for the Department of Transportation, CDOT,
Okay.
and we did it for their training managers, and we assigned them. We gave them the camera equipment and assigned them to go out in the field and in the yard and come back and we just gave them a free hand and say, tell us what the problems are. And their
Yeah.
opening shot was a picture of a garage. We thought, okay, it's a picture of a garage. And then they zoomed in on the left side and the right side, and it had been hammered by trucks banging away and, ripping off their side lights and stuff like that, because people would back them into the garage or drive them into the garage and not be careful. And so they were able to give some aha moments like, watch your mirrors.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's just funny stuff like that. But people who don't usually do that kind of work looked at that and went, oh, I would have never known.
Oh my gosh, this is making my mind spiral because that I could just already see exactly what you're saying, the benefit of passing the torch on to the boots on the ground and saying, hey, capture what you think is important. Hey, show us some hazards everyone's broken up into teams. Show me
Yep.
the top 10 hazards as a driver that you see and show that in the safety meeting, showcase that at the next gathering. And so that will show the real opportunities of improvement in a company, I think, more than a safety director ever could.
Well, remember
Hands
that
down.
what I said last time is our competitors, our competitors for the attention of workers
Mhm.
is not each other. It's YouTube, it's Netflix, it's Prime Video. It's
Right,
yeah. So
right.
that's the level that these guys should be able to produce to.
Okay.
These influencers, and to become a safety influencer should be the goal of us.
And you said something in the beginning of this show is what was once optional is going to soon be mandatory. And
Yeah,
you're referring to
expected. Yep.
it will be expected. And
Yes.
that's referred to technology and innovation and training, right? I mean, if we don't start adopting these new ways of learning, then we're going to be left behind. Your workers will be left behind.
Apollonia, it's become clear to me in the last year that there are people that are waiting to go back to the classroom.
Okay.
They're very, they can hardly wait to go back and teach in the classroom.
Mhm.
That ain't happening.
Oh my gosh, John, like you're right. That's not. I don't know about you, but in my meetings, in my personal workload, I don't see an end in the near future of when we're going to stop a Zoom meeting over a face-to-face meeting. If it's a class or a seminar in Texas, are we gathering up anytime soon? I mean, I think that there will be gatherings. There are obviously
Oh
gatherings
yeah.
right now, but preferably for convenience, it's Zoom for right now.
It has shifted everything. And for us to not get ahead of this curve, we're going to get, you know, washed up by the tsunami that's following. So the people that are trainers who say, I can hardly wait to get back to the classroom, me too. I mean, I've taught in the classroom
Yeah,
for a long time, for
yeah,
decades.
yeah.
I love the classroom interchange and exchange. And what they were moaning about and decrying was you don't have that personal feel. You don't have, the feeling's different. The
Mhm.
connection's different. I agree. It is. Dale Robinson, whom you know very well,
Yeah.
has overcome part of that by he uses and he knows the name of every single person in his class on Zoom.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
he is taking that personal connection and pushing it down to the level where he draws out people by name and converses with them. Now, in a classroom, we usually sit around and say, everybody quit talking, because you're all talking to each other. Quit talking, pay attention up here. But what happens in Zoom meetings when we're actually in a classroom is we have chats going on the side, and we encourage people talk to each other,
Hmm.
talk to all of us, put out, post things that are relevant to the discussion rather than just listen to the guru on the stage kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
those kinds of social realities are going to be the norm in Zoom meetings. They're going.
I
Does that make sense?
Yes, I've been experiencing a similar setups in Zoom meetings where I'm in a coaching session and they're breaking us up. I'm a student, so they're breaking us up into smaller groups and
Chat rooms.
forcing, yes, yeah, side chat rooms, and we're forced to brainstorm or to discuss a few topic points where it's just three or four of us. So versus if we were all in person, it's more of a group. Yeah. So I definitely see that. That makes sense.
But we as trainers need to get ahead of those social curves.
Hmm. I agree.
And that's where practice comes in. That's where being open to not being the boss, the guru, the trainer, the whatever. And our job is to empower them, to treat workers as leaders, not followers.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And anything else in this year in 2021, what else do you see as far as training goes? So what I hear you saying is that we're going to still be doing a lot of virtual. Is there anything hot topic wise as far as safety or training or leadership that really sticks out to you or that you're focused on?
I can't narrow down too much Apollonia into like just training about trenching or something like that. But I would talk about there's a three element issue that keeps cropping up, and it's called intent, speed, and tempo. Now,
Hmm.
intent, speed, and tempo have in common the idea that you as a trainer have to be clear about your intentions in training. And it's not like I'm just going to train you how to not, dig a trench that's too deep, too wide, and, your spoil pile. If you notice, by the way, in that video, the spoil pile was intentionally a little closer than it was lawfully allowed to be. So, things like that. But the intention has to be not to train the subject.
Okay.
The intention has to be to transfer responsibility.
Okay. We're no longer, or we should no longer just be talking about HAZCOM. This is what OSHA says about HAZCOM. We should be focused on that. And how do you empower the student to make a difference when they take their knowledge out into the field and train the next person?
Well, let me talk to you about how I see it happening, as opposed to right now. Our grant is for a 4-hour HAZCOM that we're
Yes.
training. Red Rocks is training a 4-hour HAZCOM COVID course for
Yeah.
the
Tell me
Susan
about that.
Harwood. Well, the Susan Harwood grant this year for, well, actually, 2020, 21, going up through September of this year, is about how HAZCOM relates to COVID
Okay.
and the safety precautions and chemicals and all that sort of stuff. And there are some links between the two. So it's a 4-hour class. And that's what we're doing. And we have a pre-test, a post-test, all the normal things we've done. But what we're finding is if we relate the training directly to what people are doing, it shifts. Rather than having a 4-hour class, have 8 30-minute classes. Now, you can't go under 30 minutes of current OSHA standards. But
Mhm.
what you could do is assign to different groups to come up with a HAZCOM issue they feel
Okay.
and have them present it. So
Okay.
now your overall training becomes different groups presenting.
I love that. That is a technique that I learned from you, I don't know, years ago, that I took that technique when I was just starting out in my safety profession. And it changed the game for me because, again, it safety professionals, trainers that you're listening, if when you become, you could kick your ego to the door and say, I'm not the expert in everything. You are the expert. You as the students are the trade experts. You have the golden knowledge. Now it's my job as an instructor to pull that out of you and
Exactly.
to communicate it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's about intent. So changing the trainer's intent from being the guru to being the facilitator has to be the prime. Now, next we talk about tempo and speed, and they're really two different things. Tempo and speed refer to how quickly things happen in the field. Now,
Okay.
now our training tempo has to move up. In other words, rather than 1 4-hour block,
Mm-hmm.
it might be better to have 4 1-hour blocks. I mean, divide it up any way you wish, but punch, go, absorb, cogitate, come back, and get a bit more. And you still get the number of training hours in and so forth. But because of Zoom, we can, I can't tell you how many people have been taking our classes that you see them, they're sitting in the cab of their truck and they're taking the class because we've broken it down so that they can do it in bite-sized chunks.
I have a question. I know
Sure.
you are a guru and you are the expert
Oh
here,
yeah,
but
you're embarrassing me already.
you really are. And what can you tell me more if you're a trainer listening, um, can you tell me more about this micro learning? I feel like
Yeah.
I've been seeing that more and more, whether it's through college classes or seminars. I've just been seeing this as a trend beyond beyond safety training, is this micro learning where you're talking about, if you're going to teach a 4-hour class, 4-hour HASCOM class, taking that into the field, maybe are there studies behind the way that
Yes.
adults learn?
Yeah. Instructor Gary Leitz talks about this a lot. He talks about
Okay.
chunking. Think
Okay.
about how you used to memorize somebody's telephone number.
Yeah.
10 digits. Did you
Mm-hmm.
just memorize all 10 digits? Usually what you do is take the first three, 303,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll take the second three, 619, and the last four, 3277, and I answer the phone, because you do what's called chunking. Adults chunk information, discrete pieces and parts. They learn it that way. When
Okay.
you overwhelm them and decide, I want you to memorize pi, 3.1415, when you do that, then they get overwhelmed and they shut down.
And they shut out. So if I'm in a class, so if a normal person is in a class and they're signed up for an 8-hour session, they're most likely checked out, and if they're, even if they're not on their phone, they're in freaking another land,
Right.
thinking about something else.
So if our goal, back to the word intent, if our intent is to be effective,
Right.
then we have to modify our techniques to fit adult learning patterns.
Okay. Okay.
Now, the reason why we have 4 and 8-hour classes is because it's a pain to assemble everybody, come to this address, sit in this seat, because now that we've got you transported in here, and sometimes we've had people fly in from all over the country to take
right.
our courses. Well, you can't say, hey, take half hour today, I'll see you next week. You can't do it. But Zoom and WebEx and GoToMeetings and so forth has changed that dynamic.
Right.
So the cost has come down. And if we don't take advantage of that cost separation to do what the human wants to do anyway, chunking of information, then we've missed a turn. So micro learning, as you put it, is key to retention.
Okay. Oh my gosh, this is such a huge takeaway for everyone listening. This is something to take away today and start implementing. So sorry, you said intent.
Okay, intent and speed and tempo.
Tempo.
Now, the speed of the workplace has increased. I mean, if we go like any study you want, and I love using the oil and gas industry, and if you look at how much output of productivity a single worker can do now versus what they could do in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, it's exponential.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not going to change.
Right.
The speed of the workplace and the tempo of the workplace have increased. And we cannot then use old techniques to train when the tempo has increased.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Yes. Okay. All right. Those are three huge takeaways today. I really appreciate those. And do you have any final thoughts? Do you have anything else that your
Well,
eyes are on?
yeah, I keep hitting on this one thing, but Steve Covey has a book out that's called The Speed of Trust.
Okay.
And he talks about trust as a commodity. And
Okay.
he talks about the fact that trust affects the outcome of productivity in two ways.
Hmm.
If you have high trust, you'll have high speed and low cost, which is called a trust dividend.
Okay.
Okay. And on the other hand, if you have low trust, then you have low speed and high cost, which is a trust tax
Okay. Okay.
on a company. So it is not a waste of time to build trust among your people.
And do you mean, I'll get super tactical here. Do you
Yeah.
mean, is that referring to the way the way that the boots on the ground, the way that employees commingle, the chemistry out there, the way that they trust each other, is there really trust? Does my supervisor really have my best intention at
Yes.
the forefront? So that level of trust, when you're saying that when that is there, when you feel that you're cared about and you are caring about everyone else that you're working alongside, then productivity is just there. It's a byproduct and trust.
Hemingway said the best way to learn if you can trust somebody is to trust them.
Okay.
Okay. Now, my little saying has always been that even a dog knows the difference between being kicked and being stumbled over.
Mm.
And as management, we need to apologize when we stumble over somebody or stumble over their feelings or thoughts or denigrate their opinions.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to make sure we're not kicking anybody. Now, the speed of trust is more contagious than COVID.
Wow.
When you are trusting your people, now if you have untrustworthy people, you got to deal with it. That's a different issue.
That's a different issue. But when you
But let's
have,
talk about the trustworthy employees.
mm-hmm.
To trust them with this kind of responsibility for training one another, for being engaged, is a high level of respect. And
Mm-hmm.
nothing's going to make them feel like, hey, my supervisor cares about me than being trusted.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to get over this idea of the punch clock issues and the areas in which we don't cope as well with the workers.
Yeah, yeah.
Last thing I'll leave you with is something that a guy named John Boyd pointed out, and it's called, and many people may be familiar with this. It's called the Uda Loop.
Hmm.
The Uda Loop is where you observe what's going on, you orient yourself, you decide, and you act.
Okay.
Now, this has been used in management for a long time, but I keep talking about pushing these decision-making processes down to the workers.
Right.
For them to learn how to observe what's going on before they take a step into the field, whatever it
Right.
is, to
Right.
observe what's going on and to be able to articulate it. Now, we usually have them articulate it by writing it down. We used to have those little cards and what do you observe and so forth. Well,
Yes.
that's what a camera can do now. So their observations are important. Then their orientation. What should I do about this?
I've made the observation. Well, now what?
Yeah. And then the decide is, as a result, do I call a stop work or slow it down? Hold on a minute. What do I do about this? And then lastly is to act on it. So this Uda loop is continuously going forward. So between Stephen Covey's The Speed of Trust and John Boyd's Uda Loop, you've got a system by which you can confidently move the training into the workforce more and embed it. So it's not just something they endure for 4 to 8 hours and then they get to go back to work.
I love that. I love that. There are so many golden nuggets in this show today. I'll be re-listening to this episode several times because, John, you've given us so many takeaways today. I love the idea to shift your mindset of not just training on the subject itself, but to take that a step further and to really empower your employees and to pass on ownership and authority and to empower your employees to make the decisions and to train their coworkers that they're working alongside, not just having that responsibility as a safety trainer or a safety director. So I love that philosophy. I love the idea of taking our training to the next level by embracing technology. So again, amazing, amazing, amazing information. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for your time today.
You're
Thank you
very
everyone for
welcome.
listening. And if you're listening and if you have questions about this, John, what are you talking about? QR codes. How do I get started? What camera again? Send us a message and I
Yeah,
will pass those along to John. And
we'll be
he's
happy
super
to do
friendly.
it. Whatever we can do to help you be more effective in the process and in the training, I'd be happy to do it. But like I say, the cool thing is that this stuff is now accessible to us, and it used to be Hollywood stuff.
Yes.
And as you know, Hollywood is running scared of Netflix and YouTube because they can see that no longer do you have to have millions to do the kind of effective work that we can now do. Thank you, Apollonia. It's a pleasure being with you, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.